A designated marksman rifle for homesteading? Heck yeah! And we're going to show you the best one. So buckle up! Hi everybody, welcome to LocaCarnivore. Glad you could join us today. Hey, let's talk DMRs, shall we? I mean, designated marksman rifles. And more importantly, DMRs for homesteading. And today we're going to walk you through, first of all, what is a DMR, what makes it unique compared to any other kind of rifle. Then we're going to talk about why you need one for homesteading. It's very important, actually. It's a very good addition to your weapon battery if you're a homesteader. And then we're going to walk you through the best ones. And at the end, I'm going to give you my choice for the best ones. So make sure you stay with us all the way to the end, okay? So just exactly what the heck is a DMR, a designated marksman rifle anyways? And what makes it so special compared to, well, any other rifle? Well, first of all, depending on who you talk to and who you listen to, you're going to get various definitions, different definitions of what a DMR is. But for the most part, a DMR is sort of between a standard issue line infantry rifle or defensive carbine, something like that, and an actual full setup long-range sniper weapon. And it's kind of in the middle there. Basically, it is intended for placing precision fire, more precise fire than what you get out of a standard rifle, onto targets anywhere out to, depending on who you talk to, from about 300 to maybe 800 yards / meters. My personal definition, I kind of draw the line at about 600 yards or so. So this is a rifle that is going to place precision fire onto targets out to about 600 yards. And will a standard like a, just a standard AR / M4, something like that, is it capable of firing out to those ranges? Yes, it is. It can even be relatively accurate. But the DMR is going to be more accurate, usually on the order of 2 to 3 times more accurate as far as the system, inherent system accuracy, and also for the skill set for the shooter of that weapon. They're going to be able to place fire much more precisely on much smaller targets out to that range. In addition to the range requirement, I would also say that a DMR is going to place that precision fire with a caliber heavier than a standard 5.56 or 7.62 by 39 into those intermediate service cartridges. So we're talking 7.62 NATO, i.e. 7.62 by 51/308, or 6.5 Creedmoor, something like that, in that general vicinity, 7.62 by 54R. Any of those cartridges in that general range there will do the job. I would even count 30-06 into this. And why do we need a cartridge that's heavier than 5.56? Well, first of all, 5.56 gets a little shaky out beyond about 400 yards or so because of the excessive drift of the bullets, so they do not have a very high ballistic coefficient. And they get kind of unstable. Even the heavier bullet weights can get kind of unstable. And so you're really pushing the envelope versus something like, say, 7.62 by 51. It's really in the zone there. It's really happy anywhere out to about 6, even 800 yards. It's very capable, very accurate, has a good usable trajectory, and reduced drift, much less drift compared to a 5.56. Also, it's going to carry that power that we need for things like dealing with soft-skinned vehicles or degrading cover that a threat might be behind. And by the way, while you're at it, give us a big like on the video. Smash that big thumb up button. We'd really appreciate it. Also, we want you on the LocaCarnivore team, so please subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our great videos. All right, that's the basic definition, the working definition of a DMR. So why the heck would a homesteader need a DMR? Now, of course, the DMR is most useful for homesteaders that have larger properties. Now, you could have a smaller property and make a case for still having a DMR depending on your lines of sight and stuff. But we're talking about, you have to have the right environment, a larger property, and the larger it is and the more isolated it is, the more important a DMR becomes. In the right environment for the right people, for the right homesteaders, the DMR is an excellent asset to have. Another factor we have to look at is, of all the inhabitants at the homestead, who should be the designated marksman? Who should have that DMR and be operating that DMR? And of course, another good question we have is how are we getting support here at LocaCarnivore? Well, we do have a Patreon. We'd appreciate your help on that. The link's down in the description. Please go show us a little love. And if you want some more content along with some groovy merchandise, our LocaCarnivore.com website is happy to oblige. And again, the link's down in the description. Right, the two biggest criteria, I think, factors for selecting the designated marksman in the group is A, who's the best shot, and B, do they have sound judgment? And then as a third, they need to be able to work independently. Designated marksman does not necessarily work with a spotter. It's not like a typical sniper team. So this person has to be able to operate independently and use their own judgment to engage targets where appropriate and when appropriate. All right, let's cover a few advantages and disadvantages of DMRs in the homesteading environment. And also, by the way, do you have a DMR for your homestead, or what do you think about the whole DMR concept? Go down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Everything you say helps us make better videos, so we do appreciate your feedback. So let's get right into the advantage of a DMR. First of all, it is going to be a very versatile rifle for you. It's not just the DMR, it's going to be a superb hunting rifle because of the cartridge it's chambering. Something like 308, 30-06, 6.5 Creedmoor, any of those sorts of things. Excellent hunting cartridges for the most part, and this is going to be a more accurate gun, which is going to help you take game more accurately, more humanely, and at longer ranges. So that DMR gun is going to play a double role. Plus, if you set this thing up correctly, it's also going to be just a superb general defense weapon as well. All right then, what are the disadvantages of DMR? And there's a few. Well, first of all, it's just yet another extra gun that you have in your battery of guns. Now, of course, I'm of the opinion, and many people are, that there is no such thing as too many guns. However, every one you have is another one you have to support. You have to have all the goodies that go with it, and the ammo, and the magazines, and you have to maintain it and clean it. And everything. So yeah, extra gun is extra headache. Another disadvantage is it could potentially present an extra caliber that you have to support. And if this DMR is in a different cartridge than anything else you have in your battery, then you're going to have the logistics train and the supply chain behind that. Now, one way to help reduce those headaches is to chamber the DMR in a cartridge that other weapons in your battery might happen to be chambered in. So that's why, like 308, very common hunting cartridge, hunting caliber. So maybe you just have a dedicated hunting rifle, a sporter type with a scope on it and all that, but that's in 308. Well, if your DMR is in 308, well, then you generally don't have to buy maybe two ammunition types, or if you do, at least it's in the same caliber. So it's something to think about. And if you're reloading, you can use the same dies. So that's a big advantage right there. Let's jump into identifying the best DMRs. And we already talked a little bit about, under the definition of a DMR, that it's different than a sniper rifle, and that is true. This is going to be generally a gun that has a shorter barrel, perhaps. It is more likely to be a semi-automatic than a bolt-action, although you could have a bolt-action DMR. There's no reason why you cannot. However, with the semi-automatics, it's going to provide a follow-up shot capability and the ability to engage multiple targets quicker and with that accurate fire. Plus, it's also able to lend supporting fire, if necessary, to everybody else that's in the homesteading team. Just something to think about there. Another thing about a DMR compared to the sniper rifle is that the DMR generally will tend to look more like a standard rifle that's being used by everybody else in the team. So they don't stand out. They don't go, hey, shoot me first because I'm a highly valuable, highly lethal asset on the field here. Now, one category of DMR that I like is taking a battle rifle, and converting that into a DMR roll. Now, the battle rifle concept has a lot going for it. First of all, it's going to be chambered in a heavier caliber than 5.56, typically 7.62, but there's other ones out there depending on what gun you're looking at and whatnot and how it's configured. But the battle rifle, again, most of them are in that 308 caliber, and they're just superb guns. The battle rifle is going to be a semi-automatic design. Now, some great examples of battle rifles that are well suited for transitioning into that DMR role. The M1A, i.e. the civilian version of the M14. If you've got an M14 and you've got the paperwork for it and everything, I mean, that's the place to start. But the M1A, really good choice. Also the FAL, there are civilian clones of the FAL out there. Also any of the civilian versions that are based on the Heckler & Koch, the H&K G3. Now, one of the advantages of going with these three different battle rifle platforms that I just mentioned is at one time or another, they all had a scoped variant available for service. And this is a good thing because it means that there are scope mounts available and cheek rests and all this sort of stuff. In fact, the M1A, you can go with the complete chassis, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you know, just whatever your budget and your imagination want to do with that kind of gun. It's a very versatile platform, and there's a lot of stuff available for it. Maybe not so much for the FAL, but it did come in a scope variant at one point, and the G3 as well was used as a DMR type rifle. So that is a big advantage there. Now on the downside, the battle rifles, they tend to be a little on the long side, so they're not quite as optimal for CQB as, say, a shorter weapon with maybe an 18 or even a 16-inch barrel, something like that. And we're not going to go SBR really for a DMR because we do need that extra reach. So when you get into super short barrels, great for CQB, but especially with those heavy calibers, they're really a pain to shoot. And on top of that, you're not getting the full velocity advantage that you would want for those longer engagements. Now, one platform I would definitely avoid for this in the battle rifle platforms for the DMR role is the M1 Garand. And it really pains me to say that because I love the M1 Garand, but let's just face it, its biggest disadvantage is that it is very hard to put a scope on. All these service variants that were used for sniping and DMR had this weird offset scope where it's not down the bore axis. And all the mounts were always a little suspect, but you're really fighting an uphill battle turning a Garand into a DMR. Just saying. Now the other alternative for a DMR starting point is the AR-10 type platform. And that was the original AR to begin with. It was originally designed by Eugene Stoner as a 7.62 by 51 NATO chambered weapon. And it's a really good platform in my opinion for the most part. It has a lot of advantages. First of all, there's accessories galore available for them, and the ergonomics are really good on them. Plus, they generally look sort of, at least at a distance, at a casual glance, like the rifles that everybody else might be carrying, assuming everybody else has AR platforms. This is one of the things about the battle rifle I should have mentioned too. It does look different. It looks different enough to where it's got a scope on it, a bipod hanging off, and all this other business. It's more readily identifiable as a specialist or precision weapon, and whoever is wielding that or carrying it is possibly going to draw some extra unwanted attention from whomever. So that's one advantage of the AR-10 platform in my opinion. Now that breaks down, the ARs break down into two variants, is piston driven or direct impingement. And of course the original design was direct impingement. Personally, for the DMR role, I don't see a major advantage either way. If you're looking for piston-driven, choices would be, say, the Spear MCX from Sig Sauer. It's stupid expensive, just warning you right up front, but it would be a good possibility for you. And then there's what the U.S. Army designates as the M110 and the M110A1 and A2, and those are based either on the H&K platform, the 416, and just a regular civilian 416 would be really good. Again, stupid expensive, but if you can find one, it'd be really good. Now for direct impingements, basically any good brand AR-10 in 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor, one of those, any of those platforms is going to work good. The Ruger SFAR if you want something really lightweight. The Springfield Victor series, those are really good. Again, the SR-25, the Knights Armament, there's other ones out there. The direct impingement guns tend to be lighter, a little more mechanically simple, and given their role, they're not going to usually be putting down volume fire, so the fact that they might get a little gummy on the inside, you know, with the gas running around in there, I don't think it's as big an issue, quite frankly. And I think, frankly, it's a non-starter. And the AR-10 platform has such upsized components, like the bolt carriers and all that, that it tends to really hammer its way through any gunk and, you know, minor carbon and stuff that gets in there. So I really wouldn't worry about it too much. But now there is one kind of outlier that you might want to think about, and that is if you can get your hands on a Dragunov platform, which is basically a DMR version of an AK-47, and there's civilian ones running around out here. If you can get your hands on one of those, it's not a bad choice. They're definitely more accurate than the average AK. They're certainly accurate enough for the DMR role. In fact, they were designed specifically for that role in the Soviet military scheme back in the day. So something to think about. 7.62 by 54R might be a little more hard to come by as far as ammo, but there's still good supplies out there, generally speaking. And it's a decent rifle, and it's already set up for a scope. It's all designed for that. It looks a little oddball, so you're going to get a little attention, but if you're into something more eccentric, you might want to think about a Dragunov. All right then, you've been waiting for it. What are my recommendations for a DMR for your homestead. Well, and these are kind of, I would rate them evenly, quite frankly. That's why I didn't pick just one. I would rate these evenly. And first, but not necessarily the first, would be the M1A. Really like that platform. It's got a lot going for it. And again, you can really customize it out if you want. And it is a superb gun. You could use it for hunting, anything like that. And you can get both 10 and 20 round magazines for this gun. So that means you can vary that if you don't want this big magazine sticking out. You put that 10 rounder in and the thing looks a little more like, especially with the wood stock and stuff, it looks a little more like a standard hunting gun and stuff. Attracts a lot less attention. So it might fly under the radar a little better. And then the second would be, of course, the AR-10 platform, which I mentioned, but specifically I would go with the gas impingement, and I rattled off some different models and different brands. There's a lot out there. Do your own due diligence, find what you think is going to work best, whether it's Armalite or Ruger or Springfield or DPMS or Nice or whoever it might be. Just find the one that works for you and then go with that. Well, thanks for joining us today. We know your time is valuable and we hope you enjoyed the video. And remember, as my main man Forrest Gump always used to say, life's a lot like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you'll get. Thanks for watching.